The weather functions in Planet Zoo are a very enjoyable feature of the game, but sadly, we don't have full-blown seasons. This means that even though it might snow once in a while, the zoos will most of the time have a spring or summer feel to it. But building a zoo with a winter vibe can be quite a fun challenge, something I've tried to do myself with Valpsund Zoo, which is a still ongoing park of mine. Therefore I want to give you some tips and ideas for how you can make your zoo feel the most winter-like. You don't necessarily have to follow all of the advice, but you can use those you want and find the right level of realism for you. In my opinion, the easiest way to indicate it is winter is by having your map covered in snow, even though it of course can be winter without snow in real life. You probably already know this, but the only maps where you can have the map constantly covered in snow without always having the snowy weather function on are the Tundra Maps. So even though you might want to build a winter themed zoo placed in Germany, I would still go for a map placed in a tundra region. The location on the globe doesn't really matter anyway. And remember, there is a few tundra scenario maps as well. You might like the map backgrounds in one of these better. Choosing the right plants means quite a lot for the realistic feel of your winter map. Some plants are green all year round and others are without leaves over the winter. Sadly, we cannot choose to place trees without leaves. Because of that, I would choose to only use plant species which are green all year around. Same goes for plants with flowers, since they're usually also only blossoming over the summer half year. So you might have to do a bit of research yourself to figure out which plants are green the whole year around and which can tolerate cold temperatures. Alternatively, you can use some of the broken trees as substitutes for trees which have dropped their leaves. And if you're very creative, you can even try to build some yourself out of the log pieces. Since this is a zoo game, we of course have to talk about the animals. When it comes to outdoor habitat, there are species you should avoid completely, but first, you have to consider where the zoo is placed. Is this a zoo where it is cold for a big part of the year, or is it more in a temperate zone? Cold climate zoos will often only have animals which are found in cold parts of the world. Luckily, there's quite a lot of these species in Planet Zoo by now. But if you're building a more typical zoo in a place where it is only cold for a part of the year, then you of course should not only keep cold climate species. Here you just have to make sure you make good indoor areas for a more tropical or exotic species, since some animals have to stay indoors for the whole winter, such as reptiles, or can only be out for short periods of the day when it's cold, such as elephants. But some species might surprise you for how well they can thrive out in the snow. Animals such as lions can be just fine in cold temperatures, if it doesn't get too extreme. And if you really want to go for that hardcore level of realism, there are animals you should avoid because of how they work in the game. Some animals only come in their summer coats, such as the camels and the dholes, so they look inaccurate in the snow. And some animals will normally be hibernating over the winter, such as the brown bears, even though they can stay active in zoos if they got access to food. Another example are male reindeers, which don't have antlers in the winter period. So in Valpsund Zoo, I only used females in my habitat. So if you want a very high level of realism, you must do some research here too. When everything is covered in snow, there isn't much point in using the terrain paints a lot. But one terrain tool might become useful: the snow paint. When you place an object in the snow will disappear underneath it. This often looks alright, but not always, since snow doesn't fall down in a straight line and therefore still can land under tall objects like trees and such. So here you can use the snow paint to cover up some of these weird bare spots. Sadly, this only works on the ground, so you can't use it on the paths and the scenery. We got a good bunch of stones and objects made of ice in Planet Zoo, but the texture on these aren't really the best. It feels a bit cartoonish, therefore I haven't really used them much, with the exceptions of the icicles. I think these looks quite alright and makes your building stand out from your more standard zoo builds. But I must admit I can't really say what the right amount of these on your roofs and such would be. I've also found use of the ice stone pieces. These are used to make lakes look frozen, and how to do this you can learn in this video, which I made some time ago. While using heaters to warm up big outdoor areas as the game intended is not something I would recommend for you to do if you go for realism, it is still possible to find some use for the heaters. You can use them to warm up your indoor areas or warm up a small outdoor area like a rock for a big cat to lay on. This is not uncommon to see in real zoos. I have also tried to play a bit around with heaters to make tracks in the snow, so it looks like the animals have been walking around in some areas more than others, by placing a lot of heaters next to each other with a small range around them. It can also be a good idea to consider if you're building your zoo to look like it is before or after Christmas. Otherwise, I think it is very easy to fall into a Christmas shaped hole when you make a park set in a winter setting, and you might find it a bit refreshing to not go down that road, unless you're just a really big fan of Christmas, of course. I went for a more January-like feeling in Valpsund Zoo, so I kept up some of the Christmas lights, since that is quite common in Scandinavia to keep them up for most of the winter, but I otherwise didn't really add any Christmas decorations, and I even threw the old Christmas tree into the reindeers so they can get enriched by eating it, which is also a thing will zoos do. I hope you have found some use of these tips. Let me know by giving this video a like and subscribe to the channel. And if you need more inspirations for building in snowy landscapes, you can check out my Valpsund Zoo playlist.